The Syria-Lebanon room is the only one of the nationality rooms that wasn't built at the time of its dedication in the cathedral. In fact, it was originally built in 1782 as a library for a wealthy home in Damascus. During the 20th century, many older Damascus homes, such as the one the room was in, were being demolished in order to modernize the roads in the city. Some people decided that instead of fully demolishing the homes, they could save the walls and other artifacts from rooms and sell them to collectors in the West. The room was bought from an art gallery in New York City and brought to the cathedral to be installed and dedicated in 1941. For the most part, the room is as it was in 1782, except for the marble flooring and the seat cushions. There are also some modern touches, such as the CD used as a stand for the hookah pipe and the blown-out Coca-Cola bottles used in the chandelier. The carpet in the room is also new, as the original one was damaged. The current one was donated by the son of one of the original members of the room's committee. Due to the antiquity of the room and the delicacy of the artifacts inside, the room is not used as a classroom, nor is it open to the public. At the time of the room's dedication, neither Syria nor Lebanon were independent countries. Before World War I, both modern-day Syria and Lebanon were part of the Ottoman Empire for roughly 400 years, since 1516. Following the war and the subsequent collapse of the Ottoman Empire, France gained colonial rule over Syria and Lebanon in 1920. This act united the two nations in what was then known as Syria-Lebanon, hence the reason behind the name of the nationality room. However, both countries were technically governed separately and internally seen as two nations rather than one. Following much civil unrest amongst both Syrians and Lebanese, France relinquished their control and the countries gained independence in 1946 and 1943 respectively. Because the room comes from a wealthy home, it cannot showcase what the average Damascus household would have looked like during the 18th century. It can be assumed that most homes would be much less ornately decorated and contain less intricate wall designs, but the general design would be the same. It wasn't uncommon for most homes, regardless of social status, to contain scripture from the Quran, such as in this room, even if the home was inhabited by a non-Muslim family.
For centuries, Damascus had functioned as an international nexus to which people traveled to study in its famous madrasas, colleges for Islamic instruction, and worship in its renowned sanctuaries. During the Ottoman rule, Syrian Christians immigrated from Syria after the bloody chain of events that targeted Christians, particularly in 1840, the 18 Massacre, and the Assyrian Genocide. The Syrians referred include historical Syria or the Levant encompassing Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Prior to the migration, many Christians lived either in or around Damascus. It's possible that the majority of Christian Syrians who immigrated from the country lived in Damascus. In addition, even though each group has historically formed a separate community, Christians nevertheless have cooperated increasingly, largely because of their fear of the Muslim majority. This nationality room is a representation of the 18th century Damascus room of affluent residents and was put together by immigrants coming from both Syria and Lebanon. In the room, a gilded wall niche serves as a functional mihrab, a sacred place to hold the Quran. The mihrab is intended to point to Mecca, toward which the congregation faces to pray. Apart from the mihrab, there is a lamp that's significant to the Muslim faith. The lamp is lit from the oil of an olive tree. It serves to represent light and the message that Allah is light, and to remind the believers that the whole universe has been enlightened and illuminated by His light. In addition, those that helped create this room included Quran inscriptions, though not all were practitioners of the religion. This is because they regarded the inscription to be more cultural than religious. Given the fact that both Syria and Lebanon have mainly been Islamic countries, it's plausible for the religion to have become culturally immersed over time. In addition, given the persecution the non-Muslim faced during the 18th century, it is also possible that those who practice Christianity or other religion did not actively accessorize their homes with the religion of their practice.
The painting style used to adorn the walls is notable, as it exemplifies rich techniques used in a typical Damascus home. This room was once a library in a wealthy Damascus home in 1782. The linden wood relief decoration comes from the gesso painting technique, where gesso, a sort of hardening primer, is applied by brush, followed by paint and overlaying with silver and gold leaf. This painting style was used in the Ottoman period and hails from Byzantium originally, where traditional East Orthodox icons painted on wood were coated in gesso. The resulting painted surface is one that varies in appearance according to light exposure. Islamic motifs are central in the design of the wall panels, featuring geometric or floral patterns while avoiding anthropomorphic ones. This is to avoid misrepresenting Allah. The room's wall design is cosmopolitan in nature, drawing influences from the Italian Renaissance period and Venetian artwork. For example, numerous wall panels feature floral ornamentation in the Rococo style, in the form of flowers and vases. Islamic imagery such as depictions of mosques are included among the geometric and floral motifs, presenting the importance of Islam in artistic representation. Geometric forms make up the ceiling space, as impressive hexagonal sunken panels display detailed adornment from above. Arabic script is written along the walls, praising Allah and the owner of the home. This is done in verse, which is another common trait found in Islamic architectural inscriptions. Calligraphy is a significant component of Islamic art and architecture, serving both a decorative and spiritual purpose. The spiritual significance of Islamic motifs demonstrates the importance of Islam to the Syrian and Lebanese cultures. The university's nationality room committees were told to capture the cultural values in their rooms, and the Syria-Lebanon room demonstrates this concept well. Built-in shelving units reveal significant objects put on display. The act of displaying these objects in open niches was meant for entertainment purposes in the late 18th and early 19th centuries in the Ottoman Empire. One of the objects may be related to coffee making, a culturally significant practice for entertaining guests in the Ottoman period. The others, two vases, demonstrate aesthetic beauty for viewers to enjoy in company. Built-in striped divans also present the room as a functional space for entertainment. The seating is almost completely wall-to-wall, evoking an inviting space. When receiving guests, servants would typically wash the visitors' hands by using a thin-necked pouring vessel. Hand washing was a practice encouraged by the Prophet Muhammad and remains significant in Islamic tradition today. The focus on hospitality in the Syria-Lebanon room evokes a rich Ottoman history of entertaining guests with generous offerings like coffee, nuts, and desserts.
So, as was previously mentioned, what makes the Syria-Lebanon room different from all the other nationality rooms is the fact that it is the only room that was not designed by an architect chosen by the room committee, but was instead more or less directly transferred from the home of a wealthy Damascus citizen. Consequently, no one on the room committee had any say on what the design of the room would be, which begs the question, can this room still be considered to be emblematic of Syrian-Lebanese nationalism, despite the fact that it was not specifically created for this purpose? The best way to answer this question is to examine the owner of the house in Damascus, who probably would have been involved to some extent in the design of the home. Now, next to nothing is known about the original owner, but the one thing that is known about him is perhaps the most important detail in approaching the answer, which is simply that he was wealthy. As we have seen in nations such as Hungary and France, the wealthy class is often integral to the propagation of national identity and expression. Because of their money and education, wealthy nobles were able to invest in lavishly decorating their houses with cultural objects such as religious art. 1782, which is the year when the house was allegedly built, according to the poem of dedication found on one of the walls of the Syria-Lebanon room, fell within a period of general stability and prosperity in Syria, with Damascus in particular developing into a major commercial center while also being an important religious site, which not only allowed for an influx of money, but also of culture. Additionally, the 18th century represented the beginning of a change in the way Syria was perceiving itself. The ruling governors of Damascus at the time were given an unprecedented amount of political freedom from the Ottoman Sultan due to rising unrest in other parts of the empire, which gave Syria a slight and brief taste of autonomy while still being beholden to the traditions and customs of the empire. All this is to say that when the Syrian-Lebanon room was originally constructed, it was probably done so in an extremely similar way to all the other nationality rooms, at least from an aesthetic standpoint. All of the design choices were made with the intent of expressing the beauty and pride of not only the greater empire, but also that of Syria itself. Whether or not these were completely conscious choices can never be known for certain, but just as the architects of the other nationality rooms took active steps to capture the historic and cultural pasts of their nations, so too did the architect for the Syria-Lebanon room.
The collection the Syria-Lebanon room comes from is one of 4 rooms, and they're all called the Turkish rooms. They're called the Turkish rooms because they're interiors of Damascus homes sold by the New York Art Gallery. They were bought by collectors, most notably socialite Doris Duke and the University of Pittsburgh. The style of decoration and architecture that can be seen in these rooms was popular all throughout the Ottoman Empire, not just Syria-Lebanon. As a result, regions of their Ottoman influence, like Turkey and Syria-Lebanon, have similar room characteristics, mostly evidenced through their design. At the time that this room was built, the Ottoman Empire was the world power controlling the sphere of cultural influence that is directly manifested by this room. In this way, we see similarities between the Syria-Lebanon room and the Turkish room. They both have similar styles of design and painting. However, while the Turkish room takes up 2 classroom spaces, rooms 339 and 340, the Syria-Lebanon room is a tight, small space that is not meant for classroom use. It's assumed that the room belonged to a wealthier middle-class family because of the elaboration of design. The patterns on the inside of the Syria-Lebanon door are reminiscent of patterns of design in the Turkish room. Similarities are mostly found in the wordwork methods known as kunakari and shitakari. These words are both borrowed from Farsi. They are not originally Turkish. Kunakari means logwork, shitakari means stickwork. The practice of use comes from the tradition of nomadic people who traveled the Silk Road going west and would build yurts using these methods. So they would use lattice and stick wall tents. They would later build stationary architecture using the same methods and the same materials. The wood pieces in the room are meant to be free-floating, which is seen in a lot of Western architecture, particularly through the doors. Shifting architecture for easy mobility was a principle for Turkish architecture that the Syria-Lebanon room shares. The shared cultural influence is because of the time period and the overarching Ottoman control over the area. The specific geometric designs and gesso paintings serve as a symbol of shared lineage between the two cultures, which once again existed jointly under the Ottoman Empire. So the characteristics of design are shared by both Turkish and Syria-Lebanon room, both in Cathy. And in relation to class, Benedict Anderson, in his Imagined Communities, talks about religion as a cultural root of nationalism. Islam was the official religion of the Ottoman Empire, and it's clear to see how elements of religion and Islam are present in both the Turkish room and the Syria-Lebanon room. And in this way, the sovereign presence endorsed religion and encouraged it as a cultural value. We can see the presence of religion in the Syria-Lebanon room through the Quran verses painted on the wall. In addition, there's a small niche that may have served as a prayer altar. While the altar faces west in the Cathedral of Learning, it most likely faced east in the original home if used for prayer. Both are evidence of how religion may have been incorporated as a daily practice within Damascus homes. And in this way, religion is a common thread present in the lives of many living under Ottoman Empire.
All in all, this much is clear. Part of what gives the Syria-Lebanon room its beauty and majesty is that when one looks at the design of the walls and the furniture and the artifacts, one is able to get a glimpse of the national history and pride of 2 countries that have had such complex lineages interwoven from diverse cultural heritages. And although this is a constructed image full of bias and selective memory, it is still a valuable portrait of how nations are forged and preserved.